Web page never lives. Okay, looks like we're actually.
All right, great. Okay, so then we'll get the meeting started. Our first item is Rose's proposal for post-crash care team. And I think she's gonna walk us through her handout, and she's also sent some links, so. All right, do you want to sit over here, or you want to from, yeah, wherever you think?
Make it for an invite. Thank you. Hi, so, am I speaking now?
Yeah, sure, yeah, take it away.
So, yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rose Quinn. I am a citizen here in Kingston. I'm also, I work very closely with Families for Safe Streets, Transportation Alternatives, the New York State Safe Streets Coalition, and various other advocacy groups. I'm the founder of Safe Pass Ulster. I'm also a founding member of RUDA. Definitely worked very hard on the task force that brought 25 miles an hour to Kingston. I'm very proud of that. So what I'm here today to talk about briefly, because I know we gotta go, because in the interest of safety, we do have like a snowstorm maybe coming. The backstory here is several weeks ago, a person in our community, Gary White, was struck by a vehicle as he was crossing the street in front of his home. He was crossing at a legal crosswalk. It was broad daylight. He was wearing bright clothing. I watched the video myself several times. I went to the lawyer's office and made sure that I had all of those facts completely straight. And one would think alarming for a lot of community members in this particular case, besides the fact that a 77-year-old disabled man was struck in front of his house as he was trying to cross the street, is that the reporting was wildly inaccurate and late in coming, frankly. A police report should really not take any longer than a couple of days. And that's if you're really doing a detailed report, which Gary's was not. And that report took several weeks to come, and when it came, the inaccuracies were left in it. And so that leaves us with a couple of really serious problems. One, Gary's family is totally left incomplete, and I think that's the most important problem that we have to face when things like this happen, is that when it's reported that someone's crossing a street and they were doing everything wrong and they're hit dead on by an SUV, that's really harmful. His name didn't even appear in the paper for several weeks. And that was only because activists stepped up and said, you gotta say something. We don't want those things to happen, right? No, I think we could have universal agreement on that. We never want things like that to happen. So how do we keep things like that from happening? Well, other communities have really gotten a handle on this kind of stuff by doing community crash analysis. So this is not a new idea. This is an idea that came about from groups like Strong Towns and from initiatives like the Safe System Approach. Post-crash care is a very significant element of the Safe System Approach. The city has adopted the Safe System Approach, and I think we could argue that in the case of Gary White, that post-crash care element was not in place. What is post-crash care? It's a couple of things. One of them is getting somebody to the hospital as quickly as possible when serious injuries have happened, particularly if that's a vulnerable road user and a vulnerable person, as Gary was. So somewhere in there, a decision was made not to put Gary on a helicopter. That should have happened, right? If we had had a set of protocols in place, that would have happened. That would have happened, right? There would have been nobody else to make that judgment call. That judgment call would have been, we've got an injured elderly man who was hit by an SUV. We've got a heliport down the block, and we're putting him on a helicopter. That didn't happen. The next issue is what happens when things aren't reported correctly, is those of us who go to these places and we're looking and we're going, well, what the heck went wrong here? We don't have accurate information when it's reported that he's not in a crosswalk, when it's reported that it was raining, when it was reported that it's hard to see. All of these things cloud our judgment when we're looking at a situation. And why is that important? Because we want to fix it. We want to make sure 77-year-old men don't die on our streets, okay? So a post-crash care team is a way for a community to immediately become involved when there is a crash. Rochester is doing it, Philadelphia is doing it, San Francisco is doing it, lots of other places are really getting on the ball with this. And I'm not going to go through that entire document that I created. I created that as a potential rubric, a potential model for what this potentially could look like in Kingston. And when we look at our complete, well, when we look at our safe system approach delivery system, we should see that there's something like this in the post-crash care portion, so that community members can go and do what we did when we did Gary's Vigil, which was look around and go, wow, like there's a lot of problems here. Like we've got like an older man who's got to get across this street, and the pressing thing is all the way down in the opposite direction from where you would want to go 90% of the time. Who made that decision, and can we do something to fix it? Can we do something to just slow people down right there? Can we put some planters in, you know, like that? Those are the kinds of things that a community care team can step up and get immediately involved with. The other thing, and I'm going to say this as a victim, okay? There is literally almost no apparatus to support the family members and the people who have been injured by crashes, okay? It is not considered criminal 90% of the time. All of our victim services are pointed at criminal problems. When we don't have these listed as criminal problems, then the services aren't going to be that. I can attest to this. I mean, I actually did immediately reach out to crime victims when John was killed and was told there's nothing we can do for you. Okay, so this is a really important thing to keep in mind. A team like this could also pool resources that the community might have to support people. You know, if you're new to a wheelchair, someone from ARCAL should be there helping you, okay? If your child was killed, there should be trauma people there holding you. Our city should do that, okay? And that is another facet of something like this, okay? And I really want to emphasize here, this is about being proactive, okay? This is not about going back in history and digging up every single thing from the past, okay? The past is the past. This is about being proactive and forming a team to make sure that these things don't happen again. So, what can we do moving forward? And I wrote this stuff down, and I sent all this to you, and I apologize because the last thing's kind of, you can see where I got a little, like, oh, I gotta go. So, pull this up. So some of the suggestions I would like to make in order to make something like this happen, and, you know, some of this is out of your hands, because some of this has got to go through Common Council, and what we've got to do is we've really got to hone in on what the safe system strategy in Kingston once and for all is going to be, because obviously there are very serious things that have been left out. So that is up to the activists to go do, but what you guys here can do is you can take a look at how something like that could be put together. You could look at what I gave you, you could look at all the resources, and you could say, you know, somehow maybe we could attach this to a complete streets advisory, right? Maybe we can have a post-crash care attached right to that. Maybe it could be people in a ward, for example, if the crash happens in your ward, okay? There's a lot of different ways that we could approach that, but I think a complete streets advisory can really be the nuts and bolts once the city really just takes on the full responsibility of adopting a safe system approach. Another suggestion that I would really highly love to make to this group, and I'm making it to the county also, and this is really an open suggestion, there already are a lot of people who are interested. So the city of Rochester has fully adopted Vision Zero, and they have fully adopted the safe system approach, and they have set out to create a crash victim response team. And they've done it based on the crash analysis team, which I sent to you guys, that is created through Strong Towns. And they've based their team a lot on that. And I would love to do like a collaborative opportunity where they have offered to do a webinar for us to tell us how we have done these things. It's not a commitment, it's just a learning opportunity. So if anybody would be interested in something like that, I would be very happy to set it up. Is there any questions so far on anything that I've said?
I guess what has the response been from the county? Because you said you've been working with them. I don't know if this seems like something that the city would be able to handle. It seems like a lot, but maybe at the county level.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different ways to approach it. I think that the county is very interested in it. I have, you know, we have some meetings going forward, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able, and my feeling is that from other people that I have talked to and researched and they've shared, that this is something they'd like to try to do. But again, everyone's kind of struggling with the, well, how would we implement it and what would the nuts and bolts be? And I'm not here to tell you that I've got all that in lock either. But, you know, policy really has to be the place where it starts. So that's why we're really pushing the county and the city once and for all, adopt Vision Zero, stop kind of playing this game with it, adopt Vision Zero and strongly adopt safe system. And then these things can kind of be part of that plan when that happens. One of the things that the county shared with me is they are, because Orange County was looking at I don't, the name escapes me, but there is, and so actually it was just on a webinar with a group that's providing this. If and when we do get like full speed camera and stuff, you know, there are like kind of monitoring systems that you could set up in different places that could do some of this kind of analysis work. That's really expensive. And also, I think that you cannot remove the community aspect of it, right? Because there are still going to be nuances that community members have about that corner and have about their person and have about that incident that you're not going to capture an analysis. Just like you need the analysis, because a lot of this is based on emotion and our memories are not always that great. So you need the video and the analysis also. So it really is, they kind of go hand in hand. And I think most of the best practice programs would say they go together. So. This also could be funded, I mean, I did check this morning, the Safe Streets for All grant is still up. It could be funded for that. So that grant is still up.
Safe streets for all.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the federal government, I am really, you know, I used to be, things have changed, as we all know. However, I did look at the site. It was updated on the 25th of January. And the Safe Streets for All grant and all of the Safe Systems approach stuff is still in there. So we'll see.
Just
We'll
like
see.
EJ has a question, maybe?
Sure, if you have a question.
Yeah, great idea. I have a couple of just immediate things. I haven't had a chance to read the Rochester article. My first reaction is liability and responsibility, and I haven't had a chance to look at the composition of the board. Who would have oversight over that board legally if someone does something? I mean, is it going to be, like a hospital type person and a police person and professionals who'd be involved in this? A regular citizen helping with a crash, I could see like lawsuits down the road. So I need to do more research of what you provided.
Yeah.
But the idea of a city having a crash response unit, would it be in the police department? Would it be, you know what I'm saying? The fire department? I don't know if they're separate things. Who would be like liable legally for the actions of that group? So that's my first concern, because I think that that's a major issue with citizens or non-professionals getting involved in a situation like a crash. But if the Rochester has worked it out, or if whatever, I'll go read that and see. But if they've worked out that part, then, and it's got some kind of framework, I could see the council that would be their first reaction, is like, well, who are they going to sue us? If somebody on the committee of the Complete Streets goes and helps, and they're not a doctor and they're not a policeman, or, whatever. So that would be my first reaction. I'd like to study more on this and maybe like have us talk about it at the next meeting.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that really quickly. I don't want to make it seem as if this is an EMS response, right? This is not, we're all going to go running out of this room because there's a crash. This is several days later, a group of people are going to go over, talk to the people, and look at the scene. So this is not a replacement for EMS. So that is the first thing. The second thing is I really do hope we have this meeting with Rochester, because none of these suggestions that a community will make are binding, right? So what's going to happen is the communities come back and they say, well, we think people are going too fast, and we think that there should be a light and there should be a stop sign. And then that's going to go back to the city, and we know how long it takes to make any of those changes happen. But at least there has been an attempt to look at this situation and say, these are some of the things that we would suggest as citizens, as people who live here. Also, these groups do work very closely with police departments traditionally. We would be working, for example, so the county has a reconstruction team. That would be a great opportunity to really do a lot of collaborative work with the sheriff's department. So I don't think that it's about getting rid of, those. I mean, I think that it's about bringing these communities together and working with them.
So you're really saying that this is a post-crash, let's see how we could have avoided this
Yes.
kind of group?
Yeah, that's what, yeah. With also hopefully the potentiality of offering some things to help the actual victims, right? Maybe that would be the best.
Well, that's the part that I would be leery about, because again, I think looking at crashes and figuring out, again, like this crash where apparently there was a light, but he wasn't at the light or something. I don't remember all the details, but I think it was something like that. And that's what a lot of people do, is they don't use that crosswalk at the light. Was that part of that issue?
Well,
anyway.
Yeah.
So
he crossed where it was closest for him to cross legally, because he crossed at a corner, which is a legal place to cross.
But not at the place for the crosswalk. Okay.
Against it, yeah.
Right. Okay. I think analyzing and recommending to whoever, the city or the council or whoever, police departments, fire people, whoever, is great. But I think offering assistance to victims, again, I guess because I worked in the legal field for many years, got to be careful about if you're not, what you're saying to people and suggesting that you won't then be liable or have the council be liable or the committee. So that's the part that I would like to research more and see. I mean, presenting a recommendation to the city, to the mayor, to the council of, oh, there have been 4 crashes in this block in the last year. Hello, like that. But contacting the victim and saying, oh, we're here to help you, but what would we be helping them with? That's the part that I'm confused about. Like, just,
But, if I
so,
can speak as a victim, if I can speak for a victim, as a victim for a moment, what would be helpful, first of all, is the recognition that something terrible happened. Because as a victim, I can't tell you how horrible it feels, really horrible it feels, when these situations are just kind of cleaned up and nobody talks about it anymore. Okay?
and that's because
That's like one of the big things you could do. The second thing is, just like, when we have things like crime victims, there are professionals, there are trauma-informed professionals that could be working with people, just like we do with crime victim. Just that level of support would make a huge difference.
so you're saying recommend trauma people to a victim, that kind of thing? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that that's a great idea. Again, I know I'm sounding like a broken record here. I think we have to be careful about liability of if we recommend somebody to, go talk to somebody and they say, well, Mary from the ex-council came and said something and then, whatever. So coming up with recommendations of people reaching out maybe as an individual and saying, we're sorry. I don't know. I think that those are great ideas, but remember, we're on a committee that is part of the city. And so in a sense that we represent, and if we say something to somebody,
I don't
then
want to get too ahead of ourselves at this point. I mean, I really think, the thought is that if there's a victim of a traffic accident or fatality, the family is just contacted by a support network that'll be established, down the road at some point. Like, it's not
right,
gonna
yeah,
get-
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Katrina?
Hi there, everybody. I came here today in my role as a commissioner on the Live Well Commission, but I also work at the Department of Mental Health, and I thought that I might, I really am glad to be here. I'm excited to hear about these ideas. I also know the family that was impacted, the child that was impacted recently, and that's what brings me to this meeting today. I just wanted to be sure that your committee was aware of the Ulster County Mobile Mental Health Team, who is certainly available to respond to these types of situations in the aftermath of really anything, but certainly the type of situation that happened to this family. They would be able to provide on-site, in-home support however long is needed to kind of help folks impacted by this type of thing kind of process what happened, connect to resources if needed. That's something that the county contracts with an organization called Access Supports for Living to do. And as a matter of fact, the city of Kingston also, through our office, contracts with the team to do work specifically within the city limits. So just wanting to be sure that everybody was aware that that resource is available and certainly in a position to lend a hand without the types of concerns that I can appreciate you're bringing up as it relates to those types of outreaches.
Thank you so much, Katrina. And that exactly goes kind of to my point of, if we had a group together that said, all right, well, here's a resource that you can, a lot of this is just offering the resource. Because this is the first time I'm hearing about it, and I work with these families all the time. So this is
That
that
makes sense. Who knew about this group? That's the first time I've heard about it too. I bet people at this table are too. I mean, that's the kind of thing that a handout could be sent to the family or mailed or dropped off and said, here are all the resources that are available to you. That would be professionals handling it.
Yeah, so something to take into consideration.
Katrina, what's the best number for people to call? Is it the 911?
So 988 is a nationwide number that replaced the suicide prevention hotline that anyone can call for any type of like crisis or mental health related issue, whether it's an emergency or not. They can connect you with resources that make the most sense. So that's like a nice, easy number for people to remember. Certainly, we encourage residents to contact our office. It makes me sad to hear, just kind of like a general group of like residents and people in my community that never heard of the mobile mental health team. That's really like the work of our office to make sure our residents are aware of those types of resources. I can put the number for the mobile mental health team in the chat to Emily, and maybe she can share it with this group, because they have like a toll-free number and they're available 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, 365. So any information that we can share that would be helpful, I'm definitely happy to share that.
That'd be great, yeah.
And I just want to add one more thing, and then we can move on to this, because I know you guys have other business, but we focused a lot on, the worst case scenarios, but actually this team would also be tasked with, say there's been 5 complaints about an intersection from the community. Then there also would be like a team that would go out and look at, all right, well, why is everyone complaining about this intersection? Is there something that can be done? Is there a recommendation? A non-binding, and I think that's a really important point here, a non-binding recommendation that could be made that, has some kind of officiality, if you will, to it, but it's not official. It's not like a report that's saying you gotta do this. It's our impressions of this intersection. And again, you would have hopefully a planner, hopefully an engineer, hopefully law enforcement also there with you looking at these things. So.
The mobile mental health number is 844-277-4820.
Say that one more time.
844-277-4820, and the first number that Katrina mentioned was 988. That's that national number.
Okay. Great.
It looks like Brandon, you came on off mic or unmute.
Yeah. So question, I love the idea of a care team. What's the ask that you're making? Is there like an action item for us?
Me? I think the action item would be, let's talk to Rochester if we can work that out. Then this way, some of these questions that people have, talking to an actual municipality that's worked some of them out, might be a good thing to try to establish, I would think. So in terms, I'm not asking for everyone to agree with this today, obviously, but what I'm asking for is for this conversation to get opened up and for us to talk to other groups and people that are doing this. That would be what I would suggest.
All right, we can discuss this offline, I guess, and then, all right, great. Well, thanks, Rose. Thanks for presenting this early.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for having me, really.
Sure. All right, so next item of discussion was an update on any grants. I see Emily.
Oh, you want to vote for the, you're jumping the road for officers?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I guess we can do a vote then. If we do have a quorum, I think we're missing a couple people, but
No pressure from me.
yeah, no, I think, well, we have to do it at some point, right? So the reason we put off last month was that we were missing our 2 newest members. And so we wanted to offer them the opportunity to stand for any roles that basically there are 3. There's chair, vice chair, and secretary. So I don't know if either of you had any desire to stand for a role or
I think I'm gonna settle in for a minute.
Sure. Fair enough.
Volunteer for a role. But thank you for asking.
Brandon, did you have any desire?
Unfortunately, right now I'm job hunting, and hopefully I will find something that allows me to stay in Kingston, but there's a non-zero possibility that I will have to leave Kingston in June, and so I wouldn't want to bail.
Fair enough. So how do we normally do this? Would you just ask if there's anyone to run for any of the roles?
Procedurally, if that's what you're asking, yeah, usually you sort of make a slate of officers and then you call for a vote for the slate. So you just discuss who, and then someone would say, I make a motion to have blah, blah for president, blah for vice president, blah for secretary. Do I hear a second?
Okay.
We don't have a secretary right now.
Well, EJ has always sort of been our
Oh, okay.
unofficial
Okay,
secretary. Yeah, so as it stands now, I'm the chair, Ellen's the vice chair, and then EJ is secretary.
What does the secretary do?
The secretary shall keep accurate records of the meetings and activities and shall provide the staff liaison, that's me, and the chair, the minutes of the meetings no later than 7 days after the meeting.
We had
So
a,
I don't mind doing it, but there are times when my clients will, I won't, I may have to miss a meeting because of client meetings. So, somebody could take over on those meetings. That's okay. But I thought we had this thing where we were amending the agenda, right, Emily, for the minutes?
Yeah, so we've started using Google Documents, and the hope there was that it could be a lot easier to take some meeting notes. And I highly recommend that meeting notes can just be the action items, or if there's some significant conversation that you want to remember what was discussed, I highly recommend that. It does not need to be a point by point, who
Right,
said
right.
what.
I know we had also toyed briefly with the idea of using AI, which may have come a long way since then also. Might be a lot easier. And the first time I tried it, it was hard to sync up with the meeting, but we can look into that again, which may sort of negate the need for an official secretary.
I mean, I could be secretary, and in the event that I have to leave, we'll figure it out.
I could be your backup. How about that?
Wonderful.
If you can't make a meeting, that I would feel better about that because that would give me a little more leeway of with clients.
Okay.
All right, all in favor of that arrangement?
You can do it that way if you want,
Oh.
do each one, but why don't you make a slate, and then you do one.
A slate, okay,
Just
great.
a little bit easier.
I'm happy to remain chair unless someone would like to take the role.
All right, I'll take a stab at the slate, so, I move that the current officers, Ella, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Paul, I don't know why I wanted to call you Peter, okay? That Paul remain as chair, Ella as vice chair, Brandon will be the secretary, knowing that if he is not available, EJ will be backup.
Sounds great. I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passes.
Great, thanks, everyone.
Okay. Sorry, Paul, you can run the meeting, but I'm just gonna get ready.
No, absolutely. So the next item, back on track, is grant applications update. And Emily would just add a little note that the city is sort of keeping an eye on the federal situation very closely.
Here, I've got a handout, just put the link to the document in the chat for you all. I think Harry gave you one, to write out. If you all, take one down. And yeah, I think you were making that note that I put in the meeting agenda.
Yeah,
You want me to?
yeah, if you want to explain if there's anything, no, I know that the funding was paused, then it was supposedly unpaused, and if there's any, whatever the latest is
So,
relevant to, us and our projects.
on the agenda, I've got this note from Ruth Ann, who's the Director of Grants Management. She just wanted me to make sure to tell you all that the city is very concerned about federal funding. Specifically, we received a RAISE grant. This was for projects down by the waterfront to mitigate flooding, and it's going to improve the streetscape, and it was going to do the final connector on the Green Line from Rondout Gardens down to the Rondout Waterfront was included in that. So the city was technically not in contract with the federal government yet. We feel that it's quite likely that the federal government's going to try to claw back those funds. No one, myself, nobody else here understands what's going to happen in the future. So just a real red flag there for the city. So,
So it was approved and then they're.
right, we were
It was already
awarded the
approved.
grant,
Okay.
but it takes a very long time to get into contract.
Got it, okay,
And it was,
And I don't know where in that process the contract was. I can't speak to that.
Okay.
But
It was
technically,
not done.
it was not,
Yeah.
all the signatures were not on the lines.
it was more than $20 million, right?
I don't recall the total. It might be on
It was
here.
a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
They might be on your side.
Maybe for them, not for us.
And
Big
not
deal.
to, not to continue with the June date stuff, but every indication is that with the new administration will be less competitive for future grants.
Kingston will be,
New York State,
New York State.
Kingston is also seen as a very progressive city. If they find, the language that they're using to, make preferentialism is not. Oh, I've heard that the rumors that they're trying to say it's about birth rates is how they're directing the
I
fund.
saw that for
I
DOT,
can't speak
yeah.
to any of that, I'm just here to
not a
tell
rumor.
you, we think that we're gonna be less successful during this administration.
Your congressman is not lower.
Yeah.
Emily, that's unfortunately not a rumor that came direct, because I am on the federal government, the federal DOT mailing list, and it came directly from Duffy, literally directly from him.
And also
Birth
sanctuary,
rates.
sanctuary city.
Yeah. So there you have it.
Yeah.
So then the rest of the document is, I mean, we still have a lot of great projects happening that most of you are aware of. I can't speak to all of them, but this is just your usual.
Yeah, so Clinton Ave is now considered done.
Is it in complete
Yeah,
project
it's
now?
moved to completed.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. Looks great up there. All right, well, thanks for the update. All right, next we have our guest Vinny to talk about KPD's parking enforcement. So take it away.
So, it's actually not the Kingston Police Department.
Okay.
Right? It's the parking division, which is like a subdivision under the comptroller's office.
Oh, good to know.
So, we've just started. We've had 2 extra sessions thus far, so we don't have a lot of data to report back. I can tell you Saturday, we worked a 4-hour shift, and 1 person, was on duty, and we wrote 116 citations.
I know, I was just anecdotally walking around, I saw the parking tickets on cars on Saturday, and I was like, man, those people are gonna be pretty shocked. when they see
Yeah,
this.
yeah, so there's.
Well, that was a snow day, right? So you were doing the non-moving to the right side?
No, that was Saturday evening, this was Saturday morning from
Oh,
10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So we wrote 73 expired meter tickets, but.
Sorry, do we want to just take a step back and just say that the reason we've asked Vinny here is because it has changed recently what the city's doing?
Sure.
Want to just mention that?
Yeah, the reason we asked Vinny to come and talk to us was just because there was an announcement that the city was going to start enforcing parking regulations after whatever it had stopped. Normally during the week it was around 5 o'clock, 4:30. And then on Saturday, there was no enforcement previously. And so then the city announced that due to basically citizen requests and complaints, there's gonna be enhanced parking enforcements during what is, the posted hours.
Well, actually, the law and the posted hours are what we're trying to sync up with.
Right. Yeah,
Right, so it was, the law was in effect, there just wasn't staffing to enforce the law during those times. So with the influx of complaints, especially a lot of traffic and safety issues where people would be under the understanding, like they know what time we work, right? We would go home for the day and then cars would be everywhere, like specifically like down the Strand,
Yeah.
along the Broadway, bike route corridor is bad, the, bump outs in the Uptown Meter District. So the mayor, saw fit that we need to address those things for the safe, like it's really, the focus is all safety, right? Like, will there be revenue? Probably, right? But it's to make things like we hope that with the increased enforcement, we will have increased compliance, right? And as time goes on, we won't have to do it, as often, right?
Yeah.
Is what the
Makes
goal
sense.
is. So like I said, we wrote 116 tickets on Saturday, 73 of them were for expired meters, 15 were for people parked in restricted zones.
Can you explain what are restricted zones?
Restricted zones are no parking area, right? Out of that, 13 vehicles were written in the buffer zone along the bike lane. Nobody was in the actual bike lane that was ticketed. There were some cars that were asked to move out of it, and they complied with that. Fire hydrants, accessible parking, alternate side of the street stuff kind of made up the rest of it, but the majority of the safety violations were people who were not parked in marked spaces. They just made up a spot wherever, and then people who were parked in specifically marked out non-parking zones. So.
Great. How long are you planning to continue this effort for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, yep,
That's
and depending on, compliance, we will either add shifts or subtract shifts,
Okay.
right?
Like you said, you're hoping that as people realize that there's enforcement, when they say there's enforcement, people, oh, I can't just park around.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, that's terrific. Does anyone have any questions for Vinny or?
Thank you.
That's good.
I have a question, I guess. Do you know what daylighting is? It's I think it's 25 feet. You can't park within 25 feet of a crosswalk. Yeah.
Across 20, in our law, it's 20 feet from an intersection, crosswalk, right?
Okay,
Like, we enforce it at all especially the one on Broadway,
okay,
across from Franklin Street. That one gets abused horribly, so we've really been ramping up. And I think too, with our fee schedule, like a lot of our safety violations, the fine increased from $20 to $50.
oh,
So,
Big increase.
so we've seen,
so that's considered a safety.
yeah, we've seen people, the level of illegal parkers there has decreased, but there's also been a decrease in traffic in that particular section of Broadway for, I think there's a lot of fear within the community. The Hispanic community, where a lot of those shops in that are Hispanic run. And I think the change in administration has made a lot less foot traffic through there, a lot less, car traffic, and there's a lot less parking infractions right now.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because, well, I don't, maybe you know this, but I think, because sometimes you'll see like no parking within that area of like the 20 feet, and then I don't know if every place is marked. Like if at every intersection it has a sign that says you can't park there, so some.
No, in the law, so in order for a no parking here to corner sign to be put up, any street, it can be put on by request up to 18 feet. Up to 18, 19 feet, something like that. Anything beyond that, there needs to be legislation for.
Okay.
So if you coordinate with the DPW, if there's a troubled area, people are parking like on a corner, like some oddball places, like we were getting complaints on South Washington Avenue, right off the boulevard, by this chiropractor spot. There was somebody parking like a big van and a truck, like right on the corner. So it's limited if somebody was taking a right off of the boulevard. There's cars parked on both sides, like, somebody was on a bicycle, anything like that they were invisible, right? So like we got complaints about that, and we were just able to call and get the no parking sign put up like 18 feet in from the corner, and we didn't need any legislation. It was just reaching out to the DPW sign.
Great. And we can probably do 311s on that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
Sort of raise awareness, if there are problem spots, so it's aware of.
Just one question, really quick. What about people who basically take up the sidewalk when they park? If they're parked in a driveway and their big car.
Yeah.
So are those?
That's actually against the law as well, against like our sidewalk law. So they get, actually Gustavo is my eyes on the ground. Like he helps us with that so much, but, yeah, like that's illegal and they get ticketed. We do it by complaint just because, you know, it's somebody's driveway
Yeah.
and I understand the law, but I can imagine if I came out of my house, parked in my driveway and I saw I got a parking ticket,
You'd be upset.
it would be upset. So we try to, we give out warnings initially, we take, you know, additional steps to kind of keep things copacetic between the public and the parking team. But yeah, we've given plenty of tickets for it, and there's some people got towed out of their own driveway just because they refuse to move. But it's super important for pedestrians to have access to the sidewalk at all times. Like if you have I think of parents with children in a stroller, people in a wheelchair. Like if you have to go out into the street around, it's dangerous.
Yeah. Is there, so I don't know how Gustavo does it, but is there a good way to contact your department with complaints or just sort of?
He goes through the Q alert system.
The 311.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right, perfect. We're all, I think, pretty familiar with that. That's a good way to record complaints and issues that people have. So. All right.
Yeah, I gotta say that Vinny and his team has always been responsive and really quick to address any issue. I probably hold a record of most tickets.
Definitely. Right, like we always tell you, we appreciate your feedback, your communication helps us to serve the community better, right?
Yeah.
So we appreciate. I'm glad. I wish I had more people like you, Gustavo.
Thank you. One thing. A few meetings ago, we had somebody from DPW talking about how when people don't move their cars out of the odd or even side of the street, that complicates plowing. And I think it was Claudette who mentioned that in other places that they just tow those cars. I think here I only seen giving tickets. It's that's something that we've considered or we do, towing cars that fail to move out of the plowing way.
So the last storm, we towed 27 vehicles. The majority of the towing we do on the designated snow emergency routes. The alternate side parking, and two, if we would have got the storm that was forecasted, there probably would have been more towing.
Okay.
But once, we kind of realized, once it stopped snowing, to tow people's cars, I just didn't feel comfortable with the amount of snow that we got taking people off the alternate side thing, unless there was a specific complaint. Like Green Street, there was cars on both sides of the street that didn't permit the plow to get down the street at all. So we had to remove vehicles off that route, even though it wasn't a snow emergency route. But the other alternate side streets, it makes it more difficult for the plow drivers, absolutely. But I mean, we wrote 408 tickets. If we towed every car that was on the street, they would impeach all of them. Nobody would have a job on Monday. It looked like Portland.
But that's actually interesting because on my street there was a car parked did not move, and I did see that they got a ticket, and I thought, I'm sure they're not going to tow it. They've got other things to do. But I was curious to see if it would get towed, but I understand now why it didn't.
Yeah. We try to focus the towing on the designated snow emergency routes, because those are our main thoroughfares. It's how people get to hospitals, work, how they travel, where there's no parking on either side of the street allowed. And on dead end streets, there's no parking allowed during a snow emergency on those either. And it causes the tow trucks get hung up. They can't turn around and maneuver to get in and out. So those are the early in the winter, that's where we focus towing. Now that we're progressing a little bit into it, there's some vehicles that still haven't moved from the first storm that we had. So, you know, the next snow emergency, those ones will be towed off like alternate side streets as well, early in the emergency.
You tag them first and then you call it the tow truck.
Yeah.
That's.
Y'all get a real workout this month, right? With the storm tonight and then 2 next week.
Yeah. It's a busy time, fun time
It's
of
a
year.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thanks. We really appreciate you taking the
Yeah.
time to come and talk with us. All right, so the next item was the school zone program, where I think we just wanted to possibly vote on that letter to the mayor, right? I think we're finally ready to send that off. Emily, do you want to put up? And I had updated this last month, so I can update the date, but I think it's all also been shared with you, but unless anyone had any comments they wanted to discuss here, I think we can probably mark this as ready to go because we've, kind of been sitting on it for a while.
Trying to remember what the suggestion, because somebody said, or I think John Schulte said there was too much signage. Too many signage things. I can't do that.
There's a lot of signs. We're asking for some sign of, we can drop some of them if people think it's excessive. I feel like this.
That looks fine. I mean, if they don't,
we can
Some of
possibly-
them
I don't wanna
could be like combined, like the no stopping and the no idling could be combined. into one.
Yeah, and the first two could possibly be combined, like with signs you're entering the school zone and the speed limit.
And bicycle lane would
We would like
basically be
to,
shared.
like to work on. Oh, thank you.
Here, it's pretty closer here.
Okay. Does anyone want to make edits on this?
Yeah, I think you could combine this,
The first
stopping and idling.
Okay.
And the first two.
The first two bullet points.
Yeah.
School zone.
And speed limit signs, like maybe just combine the.
Yeah.
Same pole.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not, I do often see in Kingston that there'll be so many signs on the side of the road that they block each other and you can't.
Yeah, that's
The last thing you wanna do is contribute to that issue.
Yeah, you can't see. Okay, and then it also, then it says red shoulder zones, which would kind of go along with no stopping, standing, or parking, do not block driveways, and no idling. Those are all kind of part of the same thing, right?
And we can have a
Those
thing.
are all, like the do not block driveway, like those are all laws anyway.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, but it's sort of the thing where you ask for the request, like no parking from here to corners, like sometimes,
People really block the driveway to the YMCA. Oh, I know, it's not just.
it's not just the YMCA, this is for the, and this is more for, yeah.
Signage slash
Uniformity.
pavement marking.
Right, getting them all to look
Like
the
that.
same, so people recognize.
Right, like that's the thing is that there's so many school zones that sometimes there's tons of signage and sometimes there's none. We wanted to kind of make it consistent, especially ahead of, this kind of goes back a while, so it's good, I got some background on it. Ahead of the installation of the speed cameras at the 3 school zones they're gonna do it, we thought that all the school zones should be consistently labeled so people realize they're
They're
there.
in school zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They know the next school zone is the same as the last. school zone.
Exactly. There's only gonna be 3 speed cameras, but still we want it, ahead of possibly there being more someday, to have it consistent.
MJ
MJ
This area is subject too.
Yeah, the same rules and regulations. If someone sees it, they'll be like, oh, I better slow down because there could be a camera. People will be paranoid the camera's there.
Like, by Crosby School in Lake Tree, in their school zone, they have, tells you how fast you're going.
Oh, I love
And it
this.
tells you to slow down.
Yeah. I noticed there's a new one somewhere in Kingston. Where is it?
Can I make a comment? It seems like by putting them all in one paragraph, is there a reason they're not separate? If I were getting this, I would see these.
Sorry, am I doing too much?
Well, no, I mean, I think each one should be its own bullet, like no stopping standing, which is different from do not block driveways, which is different from no
Okay.
idle. I mean, I think they were better when it was like the separate.
Okay.
I
Because
liked
it
all
kind of
together.
lists.
But
Yeah.
actually, to my 2 cents is that in the interest of both simplifying the letter, simplifying our ask, and sort of staying in our lane as CSAC, I wonder if we should just talk about the signs for school zones, speed limit signs, bicycles in lane signs, and pedestrian crossing signs, and let the actual like traffic flow kind of stuff be someone else's concern, you know?
Which are you talking about? Do not block driveways?
Yeah, do not block side of the road, no idling, no stopping, standing, or parking.
You want to take that out? Yeah, take all that out.
Yeah, like
I
I'm not
think-
sure
think-
How
that that's really-
How about examples? How about saying examples instead of those 3 second, third, and fourth bullets? Delete those, and then in the school after school zone and speed limit signs over there in parentheses, like no stopping, standing, parking, or
Sorry,
do not.
You can
Just
say-
as a
What I
sample.
mean is that this like we sort of have 2 categories of signs that we're talking about here. One of which is concerned with pedestrian safety, bicycle usability, driver safety, that kind of thing, and the other which is concerned with like traffic flow and the ability of cars to move around.
Well,
And I'm just like I want to ask whether the latter is what we want to be chiming in on and asking about and advocating for in our letter.
well,
You're saying
I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't agree that it's about traffic flow. I don't agree that these ones that I'm highlighting are just about traffic flow and no stopping, standing, or parking, because that's really about daylighting and visibility and not crowding places where kids are trying to cross the street. So,
I agree with that one.
That's
yeah.
clear.
but maybe we could, I think we could simplify that by just saying, something like, create either pavement markings or some kind of way to show where you don't want people to be parking or idling because we need to have the daylighting. We need to make sure we're daylighting those intersections of at least, and so that cars aren't sitting within 20 feet of the intersection.
Is this editable, Emily, by anybody? I'd like to take a stab at this section. I think it could be.
it right now.
Yeah, it's definitely editable.
Because I think this can be cleaned up, but still say what you want to say.
Okay.
I
So-
think this should be moved.
You want to move
To
it?
next-
Take it offline.
I want to, move it to online for
Okay.
editing because
Okay.
And then we can just send it around.
you can send it around only because it's.
Okay.
taking a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do
Sure.
that. That's great. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Alright. Yeah, it
So
should,
should we revert to the original letter and send that one around?
Yeah, just revert back. Yeah.
Revert back to the one that you had done.
Sure.
And then people.
And then
can
make
edit.
the changes and then send the cleaned up copy or whatever around.
Okay. Okay, well, there is that, yeah, so we'll ask Emily to send that January 6th version.
okay.
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 Alright, so after this meeting, we are gonna chat about tactical urbanism. Anyone who wants to stick around for that is more than welcome to. And so that's D's just basically going back there. So the next two items are speed camera funds and bus shelters. Is there any update on either of those?
The speed camera fund, we I don't think we really discussed that last time because it wasn't I think we have time today. It wasn't a high priority because there's not any, I don't know, things in mind. So I did have, there is a document, Emily, did you pull that document from speaking? So basically, this is because we received, I guess there was a law passed allowing us to have speed cameras in the city of Kingston. And right now, as far as I know, there's no real plan as to how that is going to be, where the funds are gonna go and how that's going to be equitably executed. So this is the Vision Zero Network. It just put out, I think it was it's in December, it wasn't that long ago. They put out this resource called Fair Warnings, Recommendations to Promote Equity in Speed Safety Camera Programs. And I think they have they make a lot of good recommendations. So you can kind of go down and they have kind of a summary of those.
Do you want me to?
So the
Use of
bullet
funds
points,
generated?
there's a bullet point, huh?
Did you say use of funds generated over there?
So the bullet points, they have like a few different headings, they have a few different, few different areas that they're looking at. So like the use of funds generated, the goal is to deter dangerous speeds, not to generate revenue. So they're really suggesting that the revenue should be directed towards road safety projects, specifically things that are actually going to, and I mean, especially given the grants, the federal grant situation, I mean, I think it's really important that we have that intentional, for two reasons. One is that, it's important that we fund street safety, and another is that the public perception of this program, I think, is really important because we do not want to have a significant backlash that, we end up taking the cameras down because, people are upset about it. So I think if we can demonstrate that the money is not just going towards, general fund, or it's not going towards, giving somebody money. But it's actually going towards specific things that people want, because people are, I think it's maybe the biggest or one of the biggest issues in Kingston is street safety that people talk about, so.
Where would you propose?
Yeah.
Where would you propose that these cameras be? And everybody's gonna be upset with them. Are they issuing tickets?
Well, I think a lot of people are gonna be happy they're there because.
No, I don't think everybody's gonna be happy.
No, I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying a
Well,
lot of
there'll be
people.
some, I won't say a lot, I will say some people might be happy that they're there, but, are they going to be issuing the tickets? Is the camera, and there will be a ticket that results from the speeding?
Yes.
Okay, and, where are you proposing that the cameras be?
I'm not proposing anything, but I believe they were gonna be in schools.
Yeah, there's
right?
For
three.
school zones?
There's
There's
three,
three.
three school zones.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
If I could, I was
Yeah.
just on a call
Yeah.
about this actually today. So first of all, that's so fantastic that you're sharing that, because that is a really important document. I think there's two things to be said about speed cameras. One is they're coming, and red light cameras, definitely coming, but they're not coming fast. So it's probably gonna be at least 2 or 3 years before we really see any kind of true implementation of a street camera program here. It's just not law yet. And I know from doing the law stuff, the laws take forever. I actually have been working directly with, some of the persons Sharice's office to kind of get ahead of this. Can you go ahead and start making requests? And if we do make requests, can we add as a caveat, we want to know where the money's going? And we want to have this established beforehand, because I think that it's a really important word for equity. And it's certainly, to Claudia's point, like, a lot of times what happens is these things are placed in locations where there are vulnerable people to begin with. And why? Because they've been neglected all along, right? So these dangerous intersections are often really in, poorer communities of color. And so who ends up getting the tickets? Those people.
Well, in this case, there's
Yeah.
schools.
Well, no, this is different. I'm talking about like down there.
Generally,
This is, and as far as like setting up a fund right now, we did look into it, that it can't be touched yet.
Okay.
Right, this is a pilot program, so the state's not.
So here's the
Then you
question.
say-
There's some vendor brought in to do this presumably, right? A vendor who probably does cameras or do they deal with like education or anything leading up to it? Are they like, hey, these cameras are gonna happen, so that people like, or I guess is the city? would the
City, we have to.
Yeah, just to sort of be like, these are coming, they're good, they're keeping our children safe, to like get people on board with the idea, I don't.
Yeah, definitely. I think that might be touched on there. There's a whole bunch of suggestions.
Well,
Yeah.
well, in all the cities where they have red light cameras, speed cameras, and there are a lot of them, some cities have taken them down.
That's why you wanna get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Some cities have taken them down, there's always a contractor, and the contractor takes their cut, and then there is a certain amount that goes to the city or the governing body. It's not 100% of
Right.
whatever the ticket is. And yes, there are some people who think that they're wonderful, and there are some people who absolutely hate them because they feel that they can't, there's no recourse for them. It's like the camera says I did this, and so, I don't know I did it, or I didn't see it as a problem, or I have a reason for it, and then I get a ticket, and I got a ticket. So I'm just asking because, while everybody will want to say, yes, I want slower speeds, or I want safer streets, when you're necessarily behind the wheel, it becomes a little different issue, so I would just be hesitant in being overly, elated about the fact that they might be coming. They are good in some instances and not good in others. In school zones, I see them as being a benefit, but I don't see them as being this.
And all.
Thank you, end all be all as to what's going to solve, like I feel about a lot of traffic calming things. Some work in some places, some don't, but it's not just a general Band-Aid that you're gonna put on everything. School, if you can get speed cameras, in school zones, great, absolutely great. But I don't know if every streetlight in Kingston necessarily needs.
No, I don't think anyone.
Needs a speed camera. So that's why I was curious so where, especially since we've lowered the speed limit to 25.
I mean, I can tell you right now that, so Nassau County had a very interesting thing happen. So they put in the cameras, and some of the cameras got taken out, and some of the cameras people left. And it all depended on implementation. The places where they put the cameras and people got immediate tickets over and over and over again, sometimes 3 times a day. Okay, yeah, people went ballistic and were like, what the hell is this? But in the places where they did it incrementally, where they sent out notices, where they had signs up, where they had educated people that this was gonna happen. And so they didn't send out 3 tickets a day, they took control of that and said, all right, if you got one this week, we're gonna hold off. And then next week we'll get another one, when they did warnings first, like all of these things made a huge, huge difference. So
Yeah, and that's
it's
the
really
kind of
about
stuff
implementation, I think.
It's
that-
important that the
Yeah.
city does before he's going to effect however long. in the future.
Because they can get pulled out and it would be a huge waste
Yeah,
of
it
money
would be a
if
real
that
tragedy
happens.
if all this effort
Yeah.
went into getting them.
Yeah.
And they can be used wrongly. they can be used exploitively also.
Right.
And that's a really important thing to stay ahead of. Like, really, that's important.
Yeah.
So I think that, so I think that shaping the public perception early on, which is now, it's really early on. It's not in law yet, is very important,
Yeah,
So,
those are good lessons to have. Yes.
so, so as far as what the next step would be, I don't know, I guess we could kind of, I mean, I'm kind of inclined to make make some kind of a recommendation from the Complete Streets that's kind of using this Vision Zero. You know, the ideas from the Vision Zero thing that we was shared. And just, you know, writing out our recommendations and voting on it and sharing it with the mayor.
Yeah, that
and the
sounds
council.
like a good move. Yeah, to kind of just take some of this and be like, here's what we recommend you do before we have a vendor or whatever.
Yeah. We can always like edit it as we want to.
All right, great, thanks.
So that would be the next things.
Was there any update on the bus shelters and the funding around this point?
We haven't done anything about it, so I'm trying to remember now, so what, it was what bounced from the county to the city, and the city basically bounced back to the county. So now we have to
Can I say
check with the county again, yeah.
My understanding is that the county received funding from the Ulster County Legislature for bus
Yeah.
shelters. We don't know sort of where it went from there.
Yeah.
We heard at that public meeting that they invited all the municipal leaders.
Yeah,
The city looked in the mayor's newsletter emails and they had not received that invitation.
okay,
That's how I would say it.
yeah,
So when Kristen Wilson was here, who works for the county, she said she was gonna look into it. I haven't heard an update from her or when it's not.
okay, so let me,
I mean, what I heard the kickback about the funding is that they can't get a lot of the municipalities to accept, I don't know if Kingston totally not, I don't know if I can say, what I heard from the assembly person's office was that they have approached municipalities, they can't get the municipalities to take on the responsibility of maintaining them. That's what the big problem is. So it's unfortunate, you know, it's not right.
yeah, but that's not that doesn't seem to be the issue with Kingston, so I don't know, so, yeah, we need to figure that out, because Kingston, I mean, Kingston's like the number one place that really should be putting in more shelters, I think, so.
We're the only city in Ulster County.
Yeah, right, yeah, that's true.
How many takes the bus shelters get them now?
Probably, well, so there's one in front of the Midtown Neighborhood Center. I'm guessing that Parks guys maintain that. If not the Parks guys, then DPW.
I remember hearing about them, because I remember asking when Brian was still on the committee, I was like, I've seen a couple of bus shelters, he's like, oh, those are like left over from some project.
Yeah, no, but there are some, and the only concern about a municipality taking over the bus shelters is that they have to be maintained. And they have to be maintained 24/7, 365 days a year. That means if anything happens to them, that municipality's got to go out or have a contractor or somebody do it. For some of the more rural areas, that's gonna be pretty difficult. The only reason I'm asking for Kingston is that the more bus shelters you get, the more chances you have for misuse of a bus shelter. And when you have misuse of a bus shelter, that requires a different level of maintenance. So while, yes, it might be nice to get more bus shelters, and as somebody who loves public transportation, yes, I want them. I also understand that the DPW staff and probably the park staff does not, they can't maintain them in the way that they have to be. So try to understand that some bus shelters will want to have advertising, so that the advertising of the people who put them up will help defray the cost of maintaining them, but that could be part of the issue why you're just not, seeing them. And I can sympathize.
I amend. I do not know who maintains the bus shelters out there. I would not be surprised if the bus shelters that are near some other community agencies the city has nothing to do with them. Like, I'm thinking of the housing, Kingston Housing Authority has some bus shelters. I bet that they
They maintain.
maintain them, for example. But I do not know the answer to that. We could try to find that out.
Yeah, and one other thing about that legislation that created the bus shelter, that created the funding for the bus shelters, is that it did allocate funding for a study, and I don't think that study was ever initiated, as far as I know either, so.
Sounds like a Christmas question.
So, anyway, but that was a couple years ago now, so I don't even know if that money's still.
Was the
available.
study to find out where they were going to be?
Yeah, I think just how, just kind of how to
Possible.
do it, and yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I always like the idea, kind of, frankly, just because it kind of establishes where the routes are and where you can get reliably get the bus, because the way it is now, you can kind of flag it down wherever, it kind of just leaves it a bit sort of nebulous to be like, where's a good place to flag it down?
I haven't heard this, but I could hear Ulster County Transportation Department saying they're in the middle of redesigning the routes. And they
Yeah.
might wanna wait until they know the new routes before they put in permanent bus shelters.
Right.
I haven't heard that argument, but I can see that.
All right, so the first new business item was basically around the grant that the city has access to. There's some funding basically out there. And Emily had reached out to see if there are some ideas around what we could use the funding for. And we kind of landed on the idea of doing a yard sign campaign growing out of the Be a Road Hero campaign, but I thought possibly to focus it around pedestrian safety, basically just to something along the lines of look for pedestrians everywhere, not just in painted crosswalks and that sort of thing, just because they can be anywhere. And I feel like recent city tragedies have pointed that out. So I don't know if we want to have a sort of discussion around this. We want to send around ideas by email. Does anyone sort of have any thoughts on doing something like that with funding? The idea of the roads, yard sign as the sort of way to convey a message. Any thoughts about that sort of thing?
I have show and tell. So here's probably backwards for the folks online, but so this is one of the yard signs that the Be a Road Hero did. The resources that we have right now, so we have a template for this, so we can really easily substitute the language.
And there's certainly some issues with this as it stands, like it's very wordy, it's hard to read that.
Especially if you're a driver.
Yeah, driving.
If you're a driver,
or biking,
the only thing you're
Even
maybe
walking, you have to stand there for a minute, so,
Right.
you know,
We put them, when we first did it the first time, we put them at intersections where you'd be stopped at a
Okay.
light, that was part of the thought. So, the way I would frame it is that there's a bit of an opportunity here where we have some extra grant funds that we need to spend down. And, this was one option of how those funds could be allocated. What I'm asking Complete Streets is to decide if you want to do that, what it says. I'm not gonna decide what it says anymore, I've learned my lesson, so that's the challenge to you.
How many signs can we get?
We thought we'd start with 50.
50.
Also, I don't have the capacity to put them out, so other folks maybe on this board could put them out.
And you're suggesting that they be at major intersections or just any place?
I think
You
it depends
have-
on what your message is, I think you might want to target where you want to put it.
yeah, I mean, I guess if it is something as broad as just sort of be aware of pedestrians or watch for pedestrians, like you could put that really anywhere. It's just sort of, people see it, just, it's kind of in the back of their mind, I guess the hope would be.
High traffic areas, I suppose.
Yeah.
If you reminded people of the New York State laws yield to pedestrians at crosswalks, you could put it at crosswalks. That's one recommendation I have is maybe using language that the state or other folks have, or NYBC, the New York Bicycling Coalition, say that is the right messaging. So you guys don't have to do wordsmiths, you can go to
Right.
a trusted authority for what they've done.
So the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee has the CNBC campaign, which is a really good campaign, actually. It's one I always really championed. Very simple. And it's a message that goes to drivers and to
Right,
pedestrians, see and be seen.
right, like
And
that's,
it's really that simple. you
That's
know?
true. I'm a driver and I mostly drive, and it's very difficult to see a lot of pedestrians
Mhm.
because of the clothing that they're wearing.
And then if you want to add a little flair to it, a little reflection.
a little
Little
reflective.
reflection.
We have some fun, so maybe we'll do 45 and
Oh,
have
to
some
the
reflective
yard
strips.
signs.
Yeah, I don't even, yeah.
Maybe. It's a big fat maybe.
I think it'd be
We could
good, just
apply it
go to like
ourselves.
P&T Supply, get like little reflective banners, you know.
Have a
cheap.
craft, a complete
Yeah,
craft.
yeah, complete streets craft night, yeah.
I'll say if we want to pick up the governor's traffic safety council, I think they have it, they already have art created. So that would, I'm not proposing that we create new designs.
Right, yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
anyone.
So, and I think they
needs-
have those materials already produced. We really could download it and ask Timely Signs or Copy Hut to print it.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally out there, perfect, just to take. something for your-
Right, I think, yeah, in terms of us having to like distribute the signs, I think basically relying on existing networks of proponents, people would happily put them in their yards.
I don't mind having them in my office and people can stop by to pick them up. That's another
Yeah.
service I can provide.
All right, I mean, does anyone else have any other ideas for what this money could be used for?
I'm sure you guys are totally
How much
you have buckets of styrofoam bricks, right? Sorry.
How much money is
Let's say, it's liquid, what's the word, it's mushy, like we are trying to spend the budget year at May 31st is in, so I don't exactly know, but let's start with $1,000.
Okay,
That's my cap.
gotcha, okay.
I can also pay for trainings, so if you wanted to have, come in and do a training, like we did for the pedestrian bicycle master plan, we did a complete streets training, I could pay for that.
There's an excellent one out there. Great training, NACDOT could probably help you with that, honestly. They could probably pull something together that's actually, since you guys are a member, they could probably pull something together that's actually specific to this area too. So it's a thought.
My ask is that you all decide on the training. So if you can do the research on what you want. And I would also recommend you just think through who it is you're targeting. So Paul and I were talking a little bit, and I was saying you could target the common council and the mayor. I don't know, they're very busy people.
Right, that's the
But
sort of
there
challenge.
could be a compelling training that, and you could ask them very nicely. You think it's really important for them to come see it.
But then,
Or it could be for the general public. So think through a little bit about who the training is for, and you can decide what the training is.
I do think that's a little bit of a tricky ask, like you said, you'd only have Bob Dennison showing up.
Yeah. Here's another idea for Be Road Hero. We made some videos, and the thought was that they would play before the common council meetings. You could ask for or try to find like a 10-minute education video and ask the common council to play it at the beginning of their meeting. That could be pretty cool. You could think a little bit of some creative asks. Again, just to clarify on deadlines, so the budget ends May 31st, so I need to spend the money like April 1st.
Okay.
Because it takes the city a little while to spend the money, get the check cleared, reimbursed.
So the new budget is June 1st?
Yes, this is and just to give a little more context, so my department has 2 grant programs, one Well Kingston, which you've heard me talk about. This is the second one called Creative in Schools and Communities. Part of that work is physical activity and active transportation encouragement in our community, and that's part of the work that I do. And so this is some extra grant funds that go towards that.
So currently, right now, the city is in budget planning. Everybody's getting their information together for approval?
No, this isn't part of the city's budget, this is just the grant budget year.
Okay,
Our grant budget
okay.
has a different budget year than the
That's what I
city.
was trying to understand. Okay, so it's not the city's fiscal budget year,
No.
this is your grant budget. Okay,
And that's why there's extra money to spend now.
got it, okay.
Here's an idea. I don't know if this is legitimate under or allowed under this budget, but what if we put signs that said, watch for bicyclists in road near school in school zones where there aren't where there's no bicycle infrastructure, and where kids simply have no other option than to ride in the road or the sidewalk.
Well, there is that bike sign.
Oh, yeah, expect a bike.
Expect a bike.
Yeah, I think, do you still have those available?
Actually, my colleague Phil Green now has a
Yeah.
whole carton that he's distributing.
Oh, yeah?
Okay.
He's in the Parks and Rec department. Because if you can always reach out to me.
Does the Y have them too? They can have
Grill barbecue and hand out literature.
Yeah,
I think
well, there's the bike rodeo, is that what that was called? There-
We did a bike rodeo.
Yeah, where, you know, there's events where you can kind of have people show up.
I think the goal is here with my suggestion is sort of twofold. One, to encourage safer driving and bicyclist safety, but two, also to get people asking the question, oh, why is there no infrastructure for kids to be able to get to school safely on a bicycle? Why is it like that? Which hopefully, I want people to be asking themselves that question.
Cool for the moonshot, I like this guy.
All right, we can extend this on to email and then shoot around some ideas. And this just quickly, we're already over actually. What was the rural road safety trainings?
It's just a list of different training, that's kind of like a clearinghouse, I don't know, it's, they kind of take trainings from different places. And so just like, it's just a potential idea for place for the academy, so.
Okay.
That road's actually.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite go-to places, at least it used to be. A lot of this stuff is disappearing. So I would also say, like, get in there and take a look. We don't know how much of it is just, this is really great work, it's really important. And we don't know how much of it is going away. It's gonna come back, I'm very confident of that.
Right. The funding for it might disappear.
So, yeah, things are disappearing. Letting you guys know.
All right, well, that's a great resource.
Yeah, most of them are free. It's a great resource.
So.
All right, well, just quickly, there's announcements of some upcoming meetings, just so everyone can be aware of those, and some links in the agenda as well. I think with that, since we're over, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, great, meeting adjourned.
Are you not?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
But we are going to continue with the tax.
Yeah, we're gonna, anyone who wants to, welcome to stick around.
Brandon, thank you, BJ.
Thank you.
What are we doing about the other session?
You can stick around, we'll leave
Are you staying?
Emily.